Oh, my light's kind of dark in here. Oh. Psychiatry and behavioral sciences, and I will introduce our speaker today. But first, before I do that, I want to take care of a little record keeping. As we alerted the group to in the fall, we've changed the way we're keeping track and issuing the continuing education units for you, that I think will be incredibly streamlined and much easier for everyone to keep track of. And so today is the day we start this. I'd like to give you the phone number, and keep this phone number in your contacts because you'll use it each time to text a code to record your CMEs and attendance at today's session. And then you'll also be able to complete, you'll be sent a link and it can take you to the evaluation. And after you complete that, you're awarded your CEUs. A note of caution: you will have 45 minutes after the seminar to be able to record your attendance and log into the cloud CME system to complete your evaluation for this live session. And then once you've completed your evaluation, you'll be able to print or download your certificate for approximately 2 months. So you'll want to kind of keep track of that as we go. So the phone number, and I will also put it in the chat for everyone, is area code 405. And I have to bounce between screens here. 562 5828. And the code for today is 12456. And so if you'll just text the code 12456 to 405 562, I'm sorry, 5828. I made an error, which is not going to help anyone.
Can you repeat that number again, please?
Yep, 405-562-5828. And I've put it in the chat as well. So it's the second one. It's the 5828. Any quick questions before I introduce Dr. Whisker? Okay, and we have Kelsey on the line too, and Susie Deely, I believe, yes, she's here with the CME office. She'll be here today to help with any questions or troubleshoot needs. We, anticipate this should go pretty smoothly, but may take a couple weeks to make it completely seamless for everyone. And so, but we think this will be a much more efficient way of keeping track of your records.
I just signed on. What's the code again?
12456.
Okay.
Can you see it, Lenore, in the chat? I put it in the chat too.
I guess the phone number that we called is 5625828.
That's correct.
But I didn't see the number for the.
Okay, I'll put the code back in there.
I wonder how that's, I'll try it and I'll let you know how it all works.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so let me introduce our speaker today, Dr. Brand Whisker. He is currently the interim assistant vice provost for academic affairs and director of institutional research at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. He's an assistant professor of research in the Office of Academic Affairs and Faculty Development, and an adjunct faculty member in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences. His teaching includes neuroscience didactics to psychiatry residents and biopsychosocial determinants of health to social workers. As the director of institutional research, he has extensive experience in developing methodologies that assess population characteristics across the university, as well as the evaluation of statistical prediction models for dependent variables such as student enrollment, performance outcomes, staff retention. These are all very important things. His institutional role follows years of biomedical research as a neuroscientist and education program development and evaluation of both. These efforts have resulted in 19 peer-reviewed scientific publications and NIH grant funding. Prior to his graduate studies, he was a U.S. Army sergeant and spent approximately 2 years in a deployed status. He's currently a member of the OUHSC cross-departmental research team, which focuses on the impact of fear and trauma, and he's going to speak with us today about alterations in the default mode network in substance use. And so I just want to welcome Dr. Whisker. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction, Dr. Fink. It's great to be here. It's great to be here with all of you today as you also attempt to be able to understand some of the challenges that those that you might work with in the clinical or community environment, and then ideally bring in some new research that really supports why the methods that you use are in fact useful and what they are actually doing to change the person's life. For those who are willing and for those who already have, thank you very much for sharing your screen. Sometimes I certainly look at the screen and the feedback that I see. Sometimes I try to deliver good jokes, or at least that's my opinion, and making sure that I look at your facial responses to, in a sense, kind of keep me in a social trajectory that is ideal as well. And so today's title, as I think Rita mentioned earlier, that it's quite a long title. And what the heck does that mean? What is the default mode network, and why does it even matter for substance use disorders? So this is relatively new research, but some really significant research has been made within the past 5 to 10 years that will likely be seeing a lot more of this in the near future. And it truly has to do with how you are processing information right now, and even more specifically, whenever you get, hypothetically, let's say you get a little bit bored during the conversation, if I'm not engaging enough, that's whenever your default mode network really kicks in. So we're going to try to stay out of that default mode network right now, but we'll at least describe it, and then describe its utility for us in a healthy environment, and also the challenges and how it affects people that are suffering substance use disorders of any kind. So with that being said, I mentioned some the possible use of humor. So just wanted to highlight that any of my jokes are original. So you can't blame the Health Sciences Center. So I've written these all myself, actually. And so, and also for instance, any if I have any opinion that you might ask me, that I'm just representing myself in that regards. And of course, I will reference literature and use that to guide any of my discussion that we have today, as this presentation today was based on some cutting edge research. There are three objectives. So in that outreach that you received, so hopefully today you'll gain a greater understanding of what the default mode network is, and the characteristics that we see with it in healthy functioning. And then we're also going to look at how this can be altered during the substance use disorders. And then third, hey, we're just going to see what evidence can this default mode network, what evidence is there that this could possibly be used as a biomarker for predicting clinical outcomes or addiction treatment. So this presentation today, the research is based on two primary articles. Now, the first one that I'm going to mention it really is incredible research. So this is a Nature review article, and in order to be published in Nature, it pretty much, it is extremely a significant event for those. It is a life achievement for scientists. And so this work comes out of an Israeli research group, and that's the default mode network, where the idiosyncratic self meets the shared social world. And so that is the foundation of which I will build upon, describing the default mode network and its impact that it has in our day-to-day living. And then the second reference that I use is the brain default mode network dysfunction in addiction. I would like to highlight Zhang and Volkow. Dr. Volkow, she is the director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse at the National Institute of Health. She has, I did a PubMed research on her recently, and I'm wanting to say, this is no kidding, over 1,000 articles. So when Dr. Fink introduced me with 19, and I should have updated, it's now 20. I got a couple in last month, or one in last month, but either way, so even though that is tremendous, at least the way I feel, that Dr. Volkow is a true leader in addiction recovery, the addiction research, and so her role as the director of National Institute on Drug Abuse is well deserved. And anyway, so this research that I'm presenting today is based upon that research. All right, so. Okay, so let's just go right into presentation goal 1. So participants will gain a greater understanding of what the default mode network is and the characteristics of healthy mental functioning. And before I step forward into the next set of slides, we just rounded a new year. And oftentimes we make New Year's resolutions. Has anybody made a New Year's resolution of which they're willing to share? Now, I'm hearing crickets on my side, so I'm assuming that's a no, but that's okay for now. So what I wanted to highlight, how about this? By a thumbs up, who has ever made a New Year's resolution and actually kept said resolution? By a thumbs up. Okay, all right. So we have at least one up hand that I'm saying to take. So I'm assuming that either people are already in their own default mode network right now. Okay, so we have 2 people who have kept their New Year's resolution at least 1 year. Very impressive goal. But so this is, from my perspective, this presentation is in a sense timely because we're going to use that default mode here in a moment, and then we're going to look forward on, hey, how do we want to be in the future? Much of how we want to be in the future is distinctly tied to our perspective of what we've actually accomplished in the past. So sometimes we might think, oh, I've gone on this diet or this fitness regimen, et cetera, and every time I start, I fail. And so every time you fail, that increases the probability of future losses. And so can the default mode be used to turn that around? Second thing, is anybody here, does anybody, by a thumbs up, does anybody here know anybody else that is within this group that you can see everybody's name or almost everybody's name? Does anybody know the other person? Okay. Okay, well, Gwendolyn Mitchell, I see that you raised your hand. You might know somebody here. Is that correct? All right. Now, Gwendolyn, if you choose to, would you like to say anything positive about any member here that you may know? Anything positive?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear.
Okay. So I want to say something positive about Dolores Parker. I think that she has the biggest heart, and she is the most thoughtful person that I know.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Gwendolyn. And I really appreciate you sounding in and then also representing one of our other members here today. And here in a few moments, we're also going to go over some of the neuroscientific significance of what you did and then how it's perceived by an individual and collectively as well. So if anybody remembers, I'm this is a blast from the past, but in Mariah Carey's earlier professional days, she came out with this Daydream sound album. It's quite popular. But so we've been thinking about this part of the brain called the default mode network and how it works. So it's kind of like a detective. It's always trying to sense what's going on around you by taking in new information from the outside world, which I'm calling extrinsic, outside world, and combining it with everything you already know and remember. That's your intrinsic self. And it does this in real time. So as events are happening, so some of the studies that have been done have showed people movies and stories, and they find that this default mode network activity was influenced by both the events on the screen and in the person's own past experiences. And all this sense making helps us understand and communicate with each other and even be a part of the same social groups. So as I'm going to go into the next few slides, it's going to get a little bit nerdy for just a few moments. Okay, I won't keep it there for that long, but we're going to go into some of the structural components of the default mode network. So hopefully it'll make more sense. But one of the things I'd like to highlight, for instance, if any of you is anybody here a member of the Olympic row team? Okay, nobody here. Okay, how about any Olympic powerlifting team? No. Okay. So we know that if we put an Olympic power lifter into an Olympic row boat, that Olympic power lifter might not have the same success as the person that the other person that would have been in that row boat. Similarly, if we took a person from an Olympic row boat person onto the powerlifting team, they would not have the same success. The different muscle groups are significantly trained and developed for each of those sports. And I highlight that because the default mode network uses specific areas of your brain to complete an overall functioning, just like a master rowboater might move his or her boat across the waters. So let's look at a few of those areas. Okay, so I have them highlighted. So I'm just going to, can you see my cursor whenever I move it over? Are you seeing this? Okay, so in the top left, all right, I just want to highlight in this area of the brain. So this area of your brain it is associated with your ability to shift attention to unexpected stimuli. For instance, here I am, let's say you might be at home, you might be in a Zoom meeting, and you might have a cat or dog, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they might jump up on you, get your attention, etc. If anybody over the past 2 years have probably had this occur to them if they had a pet. But anyway, this area of your brain activates whenever there's a sudden shift in your attention from one mental state to the other. Okay, moving forward, actually, I'm going to jump off that for just one moment and get onto this medial prefrontal cortex. So this medial prefrontal cortex, particularly that dorsal medial prefrontal cortex, that acts as a conduit between your cognitive control areas and the areas trigger and effective triggering regions that play a role in both generating and regulating emotions. So for instance, let's say whenever this part of your brain, it helps turn off or helps regulate or break down an emotional response that you might have. For instance, if any of you has ever had to, any of you, for instance, has spoken positively or in memory of another person, and that person was so significant to you in your life that as you speak, you suddenly become more, you almost like tear up, or your voice may waver because you actually care so much about it. You're in that time frame, that prefrontal cortex, assuming that you don't want to do that, will kick in and help stamp the brake of that emotional response system and say, hey, let's keep it in the zone right now. We're doing fine. Okay, and so this area, I wanted to highlight this area and towards the back of your brain. So this area is distinctly associated with being able to put a picture together. So whenever we think of a picture of the world, so it helps us put together a version, what we perceive as a version of our reality, and it also helps us that PCC, that posterior central, posterior cingulate cortex. It's also associated with really keeping a good eye on how we feel. For instance, let's say if we're not feeling very well and we have to do some event, we're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to run this next 50 yards, etc. My side is really hurting me. So this area of your brain activates whenever you're receiving these internal signals that are of significance to you. So those were just some areas. I'll highlight a few more as we go forward. But just moving on to this next slide, just kind of looking at some of those areas, just kind of looking at that prefrontal cortex, kind of our cognitive world, thinking about the world, that front part of our brain, which is distinctly associated with our social connections and our social strategic capacity. This back part of the brain, which is used in visual processes, and this area of the brain that's associated with, makes, in a sense, a vision of ourself, a vision of our world, a vision of our potential future. So these areas in the default mode network, they work together. And so they work together to help us balance what we know about our past, what we know about our present, and what we know about our future. I'll move this in just a little bit more here in a moment. I also wanted to highlight what you see here on the screen. This area that's highlighted in yellow is called your midbrain. It's at your spinal cord level. So this is the very top part of what is considered your spinal cord. And so that what I wanted to highlight is at your spinal cord level, the information, the unconscious processing that your brain does, it is beyond phenomenal. So what you think, for instance, like during your normal waking day, you think, hey, I'm a pretty smart person. I'm able to do this. I'm able to do that. I am able to help people in a clinical environment, in a community environment, et cetera, et cetera. And you say, okay, this higher cognitive capacity that I have, it's pretty impressive. What I would like to point out to you is you have 95% part of you that's even more impressive than that. It translates and it goes through so much data so quickly. It's so fast with this data that you don't even understand, that we don't even, for the most part, compute it. It's a part of our unconscious processing. For example, if I cracked a really funny joke and you started laughing out loud. If this part of your brain was not working, even laughing out loud could cause you to pass out. So your brain immediately processes external information and an internal need to make sure that you're able to maintain consciousness, assuming that it's time to be conscious. So this is part of your default mode, this is part of your associated or in connection with your default mode network. But what I wanted to highlight is that this area of your brain processes information even beyond your conscious recognition. Now, right above it, and so if you see the hippocampus, amygdala, hypothalamus, pituitary gland, these would be areas associated with your emotional response system. Okay, so let's say you're walking down the hall, somebody bumps into you, and you're like, why did they bump into me? So your immediate emotional response might be one of frustration, pain, or anger. And so that is an emotional response that you may have that also occurs very quickly, but there might be a slight delay between that and, well, why did that person bump me, or what is the appropriate response in this social engagement, etc. So our emotional regulatory system sits right on top of that unconscious processing. But our emotional regulatory system is certainly associated with connecting our past experiences and using those past experiences as a potential guide for how we want to look at current and future actions or potential actions. And then finally, so here, and a couple more slides for the neuroanatomy aspect of it. This is this area of your brain is significantly associated with those that are challenged with any form of dependence substance use. And so your caudate nucleus, this is collectively your basal ganglia, caudate nucleus, nucleus accumbens. So that sits literally right in connection or slightly above your emotional regulatory system. But whenever you want to move towards a goal or do anything that's associated with movement, this part of your brain is absolutely critical. This part of the brain can be active, particularly for those that are suffering from substance use. This part of their brain can automatically say, go and acquire said resource. I think I need it to live. And they can feel motivated to move towards accessing a substance of abuse that they think is important to them before their greater cognitive capacity can say, slow it down. Right on top of that, or almost right on top of that, here we get to the cingulate cortex. So we're going to focus on both the anterior cingulate cortex, which is in the front, the posterior cingulate cortex, which is in the back. This is in the back part. That's where some of basically a great amount of processing of how you feel. It gathers information from your body, literally from the nervous system, goes up and hits the posterior cingulate cortex through the thalamus, and it says what sensation am I feeling? Very important. And in the front part of that anterior cingulate cortex, this is an area of the mind that says, what do I want to focus my attention upon? What do I want to focus my attention upon? So whenever you do your mindfulness meditation practice or any sort of serious thought where you have to keep your mind focused on one thing, this anterior cingulate cortex is distinctly important in order to make that possible. So this isn't my 7th grade hairstyle. It looked similar to that. It's a little bit longer in the back, but that's a whole nother story, and some bad photos to go along with it that I tried to keep out of my social media page. But nonetheless, so I just wanted to highlight this. This is an area of all the networking. So the interwoven network of the neurons in your brain is quite extensive. So whenever we talk about the default mode network, we're not just talking about one thing. We're talking about the interconnection of multiple areas of the brain. And so here's just a highlight. We're going to use a little bit of imaging, and those are going to be referenced a little bit as we move forward, but I just want to highlight an fMRI image of the default mode network. Okay, so that was the neuroscience part of it. That should be as geeky as we get, or nerdy as we get, however you want to look at. But the story of your life, what I wanted to highlight, one, the default mode network is associated with your mind wandering. So as any of us, even possibly right now, you might have moved your focus from the presentation to whatever. And so that your default mode network is associated with mind wandering. The default mode network is also critically associated with your autobiographical memory. And your autobiographical memory, whether you want to think so or not, is significantly important to the way you view the world. So the story of your own life as you perceive it already affects the way you take in and translate new information as it arrives. So is anybody here in direct practice associated with people who are using using or abusing or have some other forms of challenges with substances? Can everybody give me a thumbs up? Okay, I see several raised hands. Absolutely wonderful. So I'm just thinking, so this is just me projecting, perhaps at the end of your days, whenever that time may come in the future, you would like, part of what you would like your future to be would be other people who have had some form of challenge, or their family members say, hey, thank you, Dr. Fink, or hey, thank you, Andrew Scott, or thank you, Dolores, thank you, Gwendolyn, for helping me overcome these challenges. Your intervention in my life prevented a destructive path that was not only hurting me, but even worse of all, hurting the people I loved. Now, would anybody like, would that be part of what you would like at your end of days? Okay, so this autobiography that you have of your life and the journey you're on literally right now, your brain truly translate that as an autobiographical story. It is a story of your life that threads continuously and updates continuously as well. So you have prospective memory as well. I just gave an example of looking forward into the future. How do we want to look forward into the future? And how you want to look forward into the future and your connection with it is significantly associated with the probability of that future even coming to pass. It is also associated with your social cognition. The default mode network associated with your social cognition. Whether we want to be or not, a major part of our physiology are, for instance, for those that are challenged with depression and anxiety, those persons, to include all of us, is part of our brain is hyper aware and hyper sensitive, some more than others, of our place in the social world. And our perception of the social world's perception of us is significant to us. And that default mode network is always in communication, taking in information which it perceives is coming from the social world and using it to evaluate where we perceive that we are in a greater social world context. I don't know if I said that correct, said that very clearly, but hopefully we can, if I did, I'll be able to clarify it later. And then the default mode network is where the intrinsic world, intrinsic world meets the extrinsic and extrinsic. So whenever we are inside of our own minds thinking, and then we look out into the world, that default mode network is associated with the information that we have inwardly and that information that we see externally. I would like to highlight, a moment ago, I mentioned about your unconscious processing. That happens extremely fast, extremely fast. So fast you're not even really aware of it at all for the most part. The second one is your emotional regulatory system. And again, that happens also very fast, spontaneous. You can be responding to something in your environment emotionally before you really have time to what we call think about it. And that think about it area, that's where that default mode network comes in. But what I would like to highlight right there is that even though there's a slight time delay of that default mode network in comparison to your emotional regulatory system and in comparison to your unconscious processing, that time delay, the projection of what you perceive reality is based upon what you perceived reality to be in the past, directly affects how your current reality is projected now and how your perception of future reality or future potentials of your reality will turn out. So this default mode network is one of the most coolest things possible, and also the area of which, for those, any of you that are any of you engaged in cognitive behavioral therapy or a similar form of therapy, or perhaps meditation, mindfulness meditation? Okay, I see some fingers. So this is a network of what you do during your cognitive behavioral therapy and or mindfulness meditation. This is the network that your focus, your practice distinctly affects. How that, so for instance, let's say during cognitive behavioral therapy, let's say you help somebody who may have some form of social anxiety, or let's say they may be scared of getting onto an elevator. And you, of course, may help them realize, well, that elevator to them represents something very scarier, possibly like death, for instance. But you need to use that elevator, or you need to go out into the social world. And then you might help them understand how their perception of their past may not necessarily have been accurate. So you attempt to get them to reprocess their perspective of the past, face the proverbial dragon of the elevator or some other social exchange. And as you slowly step them into or up against that thought, you allow or through those efforts, you help them recreate future potentials. So you help them able to face the now and their future potentials in the future. So this again, the default mode network, this is the area that you as clinicians or as therapists are directly working with at the cognitive level. So everybody likes to receive good news, and so I'd like to thank Gwendolyn earlier for her mentioning of Dolores. And what I would like to mention, so in regards to that default, so like let's say hypothetically this is me and Gwendolyn talking, and let's say I'm the person on the screen's right, and then Gwendolyn is saying, hey, Dolores Parker, this is what she has done in my life. And I'm like, wow, that is great. But in regards to our information between ourselves and another person, the default mode network has been shown that our brains become more in alignment with the person that is giving us the information. And not only does that person affect us in the now, but let's just say, hypothetically, Gwendolyn just told me all sorts of positive things about Dolores Parker. And I didn't know much about Dolores Parker before. And I may have heard something, who knows what, that may not have been this Dolores Parker. But as I think I'm speaking with Dolores Parker, or so I'm able, by speaking with Gwendolyn, my view or perception of Dolores Parker is now updated. So this is a default mode network where we're able, or we can help transfer our, or in this cases, so two friends or speaking partners, in a sense, can update their perception of another person, or anything for that matter, associated with a communication between them and another person. So it can, in a sense, be used to update a belief system. And again, this is in a clinical environment, let's say cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness meditation, specifically cognitive behavioral therapy. When you are engaging it with your client and you're helping them update a better version of themselves, or reinterpreting the version of themselves that they think that they have, and you're helping connect that person with a better framed version of that person, of which you are aware and of which you can help them identify with. Okay, moving forward, anybody see the movie Top Gun Maverick? Okay, if you haven't seen the movie, don't worry, I'm going to go through all of it now, and just do the rest of the time will just be one big spoiler alert. Okay, not really. I absolutely love the movie Top Gun, and so I mentioned this in my last presentation that I had, but it's actually more contextual today, because what they use research to show is that friends who, let's say I'm taking let's say I'm just reporting, hey, I really like the movie Top Gun. I like the first Top Gun. The second Top Gun I thought was done even better than the first. And then I could describe I could describe the movie, of which I won't. But what I'm wanting to get at is, if I told you the entire theme of the movie, okay, let's say, hey, the movie starts out like this, then it goes through like this, and then this happens, and this happens. You have such an amazing mind and you have so much knowledge, even though you don't think you have so much knowledge. You've seen so many pictures of aircraft. You've seen so many pictures of aircraft engagement, or ships, or large ships, or missiles, or missile systems, or military engagements, et cetera, et cetera. You've seen this in your mind so many times that if I told you the story, that your brain would respond similarly to how it responded if you had actually seen the movie. So so that means that I can tell you about a significant story, or you could actually see the movie yourself. But either way, your brain responds similar to the way I told you, or excuse me, the way it responded during my description of said movie, and during the time of which you watched it. So for those with PTSD, so oftentimes you hear like one of those that have, say, people who have undergone trauma, or let's say spouses, significant others of people who have been severely traumatized, but did not actually witness the event. Well, and yet they're displaying PTSD. So this shows you the power of how this default mode network can work, and not necessarily always, I'm painting it positive, but of course it can be work in a negative way, in a sense too, such that a person can literally perceive trauma just as just like their significant other went through that trauma. That's how connected our brains can be. And so this is just a experimental evidence, just to showing that a person can talk about a movie, and a person watching the movie can respond to that conversation just like they're literally watching the movie. And the more alike those two people are, the closer they are in their social connection, the more their brains automatically identify and respond whenever you look at it in a fMRI. The default mode network can also be used to show relationships. For instance, if you're taking images of a default mode network and you're able to show who knows who. So for instance, when Gwendolyn talked about Dolores, I assume Dolores also knows Gwendolyn. So as I have little experience outside of our short time together in these seminars, that your brain, like if you put our brains under an MRI and then you had Gwendolyn tell a story or Dolores tell a story, that Dolores and Gwendolyn's fMRI in regards to default mode network would look more similar than mine would in comparison to them both. And so we're actually able to show that, or excuse me, they're actually have shown that this default mode network can demonstrate alignment of groups of people. So you can literally take different people and you can see that they respond in the same way, and that same way can be measured, and the closer those people are, the more likely though their default mode network takes in external information and processes it internally. So this highlights the critical importance of surrounding yourself with people that you want to be like. So if you don't have a mentor or mentors, this is a selfish plug, but find them and use them in your life, and join with people that you want to be like in the future. Okay. The default mode network is also significantly associated with our capacity to thread a greater purpose or belief system within our world. And so this can be changed over time. And what I would like to highlight is over time. So regions of the DMN defined by functional connectivity analysis. So over time, as we face an event, we think of potential futures as of right now. But those potential futures are also based on our experience past, all the experience past that we have. And as a clinician, particularly for those that have gone through a lot of things that you don't want, or excuse me, that are maladaptive to their livelihood, one of the significant things you do is you help reframe that so that they are able to actually now predict better futures. And without your intervention with those people's lives in that clinical setting, they will continue to predict futures on the experiences of their past. And what was deleterious up until now will likely continue to be deleterious. And that's why the counseling helps reframe that. So this really is a great example of the importance of cognitive behavioral therapy. So just a couple take-home points. Okay, so I will quickly move into what happens during addiction. So we can be shaped by others and part of this default mode network. And there's also, we can look at differences between people and groups, and we can see similarities that are shared by these people. They have shared stories, and building collaboration with further enhances such coupling. And also, if you haven't done so now, I would certainly encourage you to look at what you want your life story to be, because that's certainly a good reflection on the use of this default mode network. So we're going to move in here in a moment. So a lot of the synthesis of different perspectives in the default mode networks depends primarily on the structure and nature of our social interactions and social connections. Again, highlighting the importance of being in therapy if you need therapy, having great mentors, especially if you're a therapist, to make sure that you maintain being grounded as well. So we're going to move into what happens. So for those that are challenged with substance use, what happens in that default mode network? On the left is, hey, this is stressful. You got this. I don't have what I need. I'm good with utilizing resources. Other people won't like me. I'm good at influencing. I think this is uncomfortable. I can adjust to discomfort and continue. This hurts. I can overcome the pain. I must get away from the hurt. I didn't even realize I was cut. So these might be thoughts that you've had in your life, maybe even today, last week, last year, etc. But this is what we would think is healthy normal functioning. So sometimes you have doubts. Okay, this was stressful. I've got this. I've done these things before. I don't have what I need. You know what? I'm good with utilizing resources. Other people won't like me. You know what? I'm pretty good at influencing others. This is a healthy dialogue that your default mode network would be a part of. We already in the previous seminars, we've shown that during dependency, the drugs, basically the substance of use, is taken over as the primary, basically the primary item of importance. So the substance use gives so much a positive effect through the dopaminergic response system that the brain now believes that the substance use is just as important as other critical things in their lives, like relationships with other people, food, jobs, etc. So substances can be perceived by the brain to be as of great or greater importance than those other healthy items. And what we see here, that in regards to the default mode network, that default mode network in the back part of your brain, so we're looking for, I'm wanting to say that that part that perceives the world and how you're feeling about it, that precuneus posterior cingulum. So what you think about what you think is going on, your intrinsic system, what you're thinking internally. When people are addicted to drugs, substance use, particularly cocaine, they found that when this system, the back part of this default mode network, was significantly activated for those that were challenged with substance use. They've done a interconnection. I'm not going to, just looking at our time, I'm going to move forward through this. And what I just want to highlight, I'm just going to move past that right now. So ideally, or excuse me, not ideally, but during addiction, dopamine, chronic drug use that alters your dopaminergic signaling, alters that function. And then you have challenges with the executive control, mood regulation, salience attribution, etc. But all of those characteristics increase the probability of you consuming drugs. And what they have found is that those who suffer from substance use disorders, that the withdrawal and preoccupation, that drive is much stronger. So they're thinking in their minds, they're more like, oh, this is really challenging. Oh, I wish I could feel better. Oh, I can't do without this drug, or I need this drug in order to survive. And so this significantly alters the way they think. And in fact, because it returns focus more to that intrinsic system, more of the self-evaluation than the potential future positive probabilities. This is the inner dialogue, or this would be more characteristic of the inner dialogue example of substance use disorder patients. So we just saw, whenever I said this is stressful, and then in our minds we'd hear, oh, but I've got this. I don't have what I need, but I'm good at getting resources. That's a healthy version of that, but that's not the version, because the positive version, in a sense, is shut off from the potential of thought processing at the time from those with substance use disorders. So that default mode networks now focuses on more things like, this is stressful, I don't have what I need, other people won't like me, I think this is uncomfortable, this hurts, I must get away from this hurt. That's more in the mind of the substance use disorder, and those sensations drive them. So the compromise of the default mode network serves to drive towards a reduction of that, or basically an improvement, at least temporarily, of those symptoms by use of drugs. So the final part of the presentation here, and just closing up in 3 minutes. So we wanted to look at, okay, well, possibly being used, the default mode network possibly being used as a biomarker for predicting clinical outcomes of addiction and treatment. And although I'd like to say, yeah, this is possible right now, there's still more research that needs to be done on it. But what I'd like to show you is what may be coming within the next 5 to 10 years for you. So default mode network and substance use disorders, we've already introduced the default mode network, just discussing the possibility of it being used as a biomarker. And so through machine learning, they've approached, they're able to show that the DMN activity could be successfully classified individuals with a cocaine use disorder. So literally by machine learning, they're able to take the fMRI images, and they're able to identify which person had a cocaine issue and which one did not. And so that would be pretty cool in theory. Let's say before you get to the root of some issues, if you're able to take a functional MRI image and show pictures, and then the machine would say, yes, this person is either having an issue with substance use or is highly likely to have an issue with a substance use. So that's one. Again, this is a suggested possibility. The anterior default mode activity as a predictor of drug abuse risk. So recent research has suggested that anterior DMN activity is associated with a predictor of drug abuse risk. So that's the front part of the brain, basically the reduction in that function of that anterior, basically that, and getting more specific, that cingulate cortex, that anterior cingulate cortex, whenever that reduces its functioning, that increases the probability for drug use. Now, this is the exact area that meditation and mindfulness are one of the major areas that meditation mindfulness focuses on. So just highlighting meditation mindfulness as a utility for substance use disorder therapy. Resting state imaging DMN. So they claim that it may be a potential low-cost use to identify those that might be predisposed towards drug abuse for early intervention. And I don't know about you, but it's unlikely that most of us have had functional magnetic resonant imaging or any other high speed, high speed scan of our brain. It's unlikely, given, I mean, there might be a couple of us here, but the point is this is still on the horizon yet, but it's still a possibility. And then the modulating the DMN activity. So transcranial direct current stimulation has been shown to reduce cravings and methamphetamine use. I apologize for that stumbling. I need to take a sip of water, but I'll wait till we get through first. And so anyway, they're able to show that transcranial how about I just say this? DCS is able to positively influence or positively affect that default mode network, and in a sense help those that are struggling with substance use. So again, for those that use transcranial magnetic stimulation or other forms of DCS, you can see you can see how that actually affects areas associated with the default mode network, and that's what you're correcting. I already highlighted the importance of meditation, mindfulness-based interventions, but that specifically works on that, again, on that anterior cingulate cortex, which the stronger that is, the more focused you're able to be, and the more you're able to, in a sense, take your mind off of things that are being perceived as emotionally negative in your life. And I also wanted to highlight, so we are now at the end, but I'm just scrolling through here. So this image right here, this image, this image, this image, and this image, and this image, these images were automatically generated by the machine learning of which I introduced at the start of this last section. So all of those images were spontaneously generated by the words that were in the presentation. And so this is an example whenever we talk about machine learning of some of the utility that it can have. So you don't necessarily have to in the future. So this part is by potentials of the future, both for us as individuals, your clients, or potentials that of types of therapeutic interventions that could be leveraged even before greater interventions were necessary. This is just one small example of just taking words and then automatic generation of pictures, and the machine learning can take automatically generated pictures and then, in a sense, backtrack that to this person this person either has or is likely to have an issue with substance use. So I just wanted to highlight that even though some of these, even though that all of this is not available right now, it's likely coming soon. So we'll hopefully we'll see some positive next steps for therapy in the near future. But as for now, we certainly know that cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness meditation are excellent therapeutic interventions for those that are challenged with substance use disorders. And with that, that is my presentation for the day. And I'm going to be around for the next few minutes. I know that we're about to get off here in a few moments, but I will stay on, assuming somebody would like to stay longer than the recorded time. So thank you, Dr. Fink.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from the group? Feel free to put them in the chat box, and I can also read them as well.
Brandy, some people are having trouble with
With the tech, yeah, I saw that. Let's see. Any questions for Dr. Whisker? Let's see, and Susie Deely is still on too. But any last questions for Dr. Whisker, and then we'll turn toward the continuing education units. Nope. Okay.
Well, okay. Well, I guess that's my cue. So thank you all for allowing me to be here today. I'm absolutely ecstatic that all of you significantly need these credits, and that's why you're here, but I'm taking advantage of it while I can. So,
Yeah.
so thank
Thanks,
you.
Grant.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and we'll see you hopefully in the future.
Great. Thank you. So let's see.
By the way, Brandy, I did go in and I got my certificate and everything. It worked for me. I think you have
Okay.
to go in and set up an account and everything first. If you're outside of this OU, then I think you have to go in and set up an account first.
Yes, that is probably correct. That was probably a critical step we left out of.
So if you, I'm going to chime in here. So if you're an OUHSC employee, you still have to set up an account. And then if you're OU Health or anyone outside of OUHSC or OU Health, you have to set up an account. It's just two different set of directions.
I'm going to
But
go
I
and try to
can-
set, Kelsey, I talked to you
Yes.
earlier, and I'm going to go, I set up the account. I'm going to go and see if I can do it. If I can't, I'll give you a call.
Yes, I'm in my office, Rita. Just feel free to call me.
And I think the presentation was awesome. It was just so much. Got a lot of notes, but it was a lot.
Yes,
Good.
Dr. Whisker is very knowledgeable.
Yeah, yeah. But thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, Rita.
And I think I'll give you a call, Kelsey, because it's not registering my CMEs and I haven't gotten an evaluation yet. So I'll reach out to you here in a little bit.
Okay, have you tried logging in?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Because I got that text, I got the text back saying that it didn't recognize it said I didn't have a credit type in it or something.
Right. So we fixed that on the back end. So you should be good to go.
Well, I retexted the code back in, and then it said, your attendance for alteration, your attendance has been observed and already recorded, but I haven't received an email or anything for the evaluation. And when I went in, there's no place in here where would that evaluation be?
Yeah, let's see. Let me log in because let's
So,
see.
when you log in, there is under my CME, there's a place where you can
I see it.
click on evaluations.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing that. This is Cheryl Lowry. I show that I was recorded, but I'm looking on my line and there's nothing under my evaluations either.
Let's see. So if you go to the My CME on the OUHSC cloudcme.com, under that, there should be a link that says evaluations and certificates. And you can
So you
click on it.
can't, I'm sorry, you can't do that on the app, the Cloud CME app. You have to actually log into the browser.
No, you can do it both. I'm doing mine right here on my phone, but it takes you to that website.
So when I click on my evaluations, there's nothing there.
Okay.
My certificates, it's nothing there.
Cheryl, what's your last name?
Lowry.
Okay, I'm checking on yours right now. I show two different accounts. Which email address are you using to sign in?
Probably Lowry CY at
At
Gmail.
Gmail? Okay, Cheryl, I'm checking on yours right now. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
I may have missed what we're doing. I had to take a phone call for a minute, but I am all logged in, and it has like the dates for the past year, but there's no links or anything.
And do you see a link for evaluations and certificates under the hamburger stack? And when you click on that, nothing comes up there for you?
Yeah, it just says like evaluations from 1/6 of 22 to 1/6 of 23, and there's nothing under it.
Only, I also believe that we've got duplicate accounts for you also. Which address are you using? Because I expect it sometimes.
I'm using my personal one now, the Gmail, coley.phipps@gmail.
Okay.
And then I have a question about the certification. It says, it's got a spot here under profiles where you can put in your degree. And I see where it says LCSW for licensed clinical social worker over there. I don't see anything for LPC.
I'm not, LPC may not be on there. If not, I will add it and get that added to your record. Also,
because it just pulled up MHR, which is Master of Human Relations, but it didn't pick up my licensed professional counselor, my LPC.
Okay, the LPC. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to add that for you. If you are getting the information that, or the, if you got the response back that the credit wasn't correct or something like that, go into your profile and just make sure that social worker is checked as a profession. I was working on doing those, and there's a couple of things I'm trying to figure out exactly why some people are getting it and some people aren't.
Yeah, and I had called about that because I thought, well, I'm not really a social worker, I'm a professional counselor. And so they told me to mark it non-physician.
Okay,
And that's what I marked was non-physician because
Okay.
LPC wasn't listed. So do you want me to put the social worker on there?
yeah, go ahead and click the social worker. Sorry about that.
And then I'll resubmit it. Okay, thank you. I did get my certificate. It just said MHR on there. It didn't say LPC, so.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh,
If I have any other trouble next time, I'll call you.
okay.
Thank you.
You. And sorry about the issues here and there, since this is new, and it's new for us because we typically automatically have AMA credits, but on this one we don't. It's only the social work. So there's just a few things that we're trying to work out as well.
So this is Cheryl again. I've got to hop off. I still don't see mine, but I will look again after a while to see if I can get in. If not, then I'll just email and let you know so I can try to get my certificate, but I
Okay.
still don't see it.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for your diligence, Susie. Appreciate your
You're
help.
welcome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, we'll make sure everybody gets their credit and we'll get it worked out so that it'll be a smooth process for everybody.
Yeah. And it looks like, I think sometimes there's a bit of a delay that I've noticed. It's not just totally instantaneous, and that might be part of the issue too.
Should I wait maybe and check mine?
Yeah, hold on just a second. I'm trying one more
Okay.
thing. Okay, Corley, let me email you whenever it is available on the on your account. I may need to go in and merge those accounts, and that'll probably help it to show up too. So
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I wondered because I used to work at OU, so I had the old account.
yeah,
But I don't have access anymore.
yeah. Okay, that may be what's causing it. So let
Okay.
me go into the backside and merge those accounts, and I'll bet you it'll show up after I do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Susie.
guys.
You bet.
Thanks. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Am I leaving? Are we done? Who? Ian, IAN. I don't know who that is.